Hey, Heather, we got Senate on the line. What do you want to ask him today?
Do you think it's important for someone to invest as a limited partner before hopping over to the general partner side, or do you think that is not a necessary step?
I want to answer that question this way. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. I would say the first thing to do is you need to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish. What is it that you want to do? What does your life look like 5 years from now? And then work backwards to that. And then if investing as an LP will help you achieve that, then you should do it.
Hey, I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different from everything else out there. I bring together new and aspiring investors on each and every episode and let the aspiring investors ask the questions that they need answered. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably have the same questions. So before you get to this episode that we have prepared for you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. I'm very excited for today's show. I know I always say that, but I am really excited today. We've got one of my neighbors who's Idaho close to me. We got Senate Eskridge on the line with us today as our experienced investor and Heather Taylor as our aspiring investor. So, guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for
Brian.
having me.
Happy to be here.
All right. And somebody pointed out to me the other day, I've always heard guys as a gender neutral term. So I hope nobody took offense to that one. But yeah, I threw that out somewhere on LinkedIn and somebody, kind of pinged it and like, wait a sec, don't you mean guys and gals? Okay. English is just a tricky language. But anyway, we'll move on. Senate, how you doing, bud?
Great. It's been a fantastic day for me.
Awesome. Me too. We're going to talk a little bit about both of our favorite subjects today, and that is real estate. So before we hit that, Senate, do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm an Idaho native. I was born and raised in Twin Falls. I'm one of those statistics that says I live less than a mile from the spot that I was born. I've been in the building, and my mom actually told me this is the room I was born in one time. So I love it in Idaho. I've traveled all over the country, but this is an amazing place to live. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I was the kid in high school that sold things out of his locker, and just always looking to start another business or to grow something, and just always wanted to help people along that journey as well, figure out the way to help people and make money doing it.
Nice.
Just found out early on that the more I could serve people, the more money I would make, and just continued to find new businesses and new ways to start things. I did have one or two W-2 jobs along the way. I worked for a big call center in town, and I worked for them for quite a while and was very successful there. But I very quickly realized that I'm just not a corporate guy. Like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur. And so you go into this corporation and you start acting like an entrepreneur and you think you're doing all the right things. And well, you rock the boat a lot. And sometimes that's not a good thing, So every time I've worked in the W-2 space, I've always rocked the boat and caused waves. And so it's much better for me just to be an entrepreneur. I quickly discovered real estate when I had a house that I couldn't sell. So the question is, what do you do with a house that you can't sell? 2009 was about the time frame. Everybody knows what happened right about then. And I had to move. By moving, I was going to save about $800 or $900 a month in wear and tear on cars and gas and things of that nature. So you rent that house out. So I became an accidental landlord. And truthfully, I just kind of fell in love with the cash flow. I looked at it and I thought this was pretty easy. Why not do it again?
Yeah, rinse and repeat. And that's probably where your entrepreneur mind kicked in. You're like, wait, I'm making money. Let's do this again.
Exactly. That's it. So I did it again. I bought a second house and then a third house. And then I bought a junker. And I was going to fix it up and rent it out. And I was going to do the BRRRR strategy. I'm sure anyone in the single family space knows that, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. But before I could get it refinanced or even rented, actually, somebody offered me a bunch of money for it. So now I'm an accidental flipper. So between buying properties and flipping properties, I grew quite a big portfolio of mostly duplexes, triplexes, and the occasional fourplex. And eventually I just got to the point where I ran out of time. Everybody thinks that buying single family houses and rentals is a passive lifestyle. Well, I'm living proof that buying single family houses, duplexes, things like that is a full-time job. And I was running my businesses, right? I was actually in the financial services industry, helping people invest into stocks and bonds and mutual funds, things like that. So I had a full-time business over there and at the same time running another business with a real estate portfolio. I just ran out of time and resources and money. So I had to do something different. And so I spent a year just researching every aspect of commercial real estate, everything you could imagine. I looked at self-storage, I looked at industrial, I looked at RV parks, I looked at assisted living, and I finally landed on apartment buildings for two reasons. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, I love helping people. And so I could see the actual people that I was helping. But number two, I had all that experience with rentals. So it just made the most sense for me to double down on apartments. That's how I went from entrepreneur to real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a lot of things in there that kind of parallel my own story. I bought my first rental property in 2007 and my second in 2008. So it wasn't the accidental landlord, but, same time frame going through with, the single family homes. And something you mentioned is you did a lot of research trying to scale. And I did the exact same thing. I realized there was a lot of benefits in real estate. And I took a lot of time sitting down and looking at different strategies. How am I going to scale this? I like the idea. I've earned a lot of, I've built up a lot of equity in these properties. I'm building up cash flow. How can I stack this? And I came to multifamily much the same way you did, just a lot of research and just like, it's very similar to what I'm doing right now, has the same benefits. And for me, it was a little easier of a jump too. So a lot of goodness there. Now, one question I have for you, I mean, you're in Twin Falls. Were most of your properties that you picked up, single family, your flips and whatnot, were most of those in the Twin Falls area, or did you branch out from there?
The Twin Falls area is a great phrase for it. I would say all in the Magic Valley. So within, say, 50 miles of Twin Falls.
Okay. All right.
In the very beginning, I had a really hard time imagining being able to do long distance investing.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't click for me. Something I've overcome now.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about investing in your backyard. I think when people start looking at, I guess, systematizing or professionalizing their real estate business, a lot of people start looking at other places to invest. But my opinion, I think you should look in your backyard first. You have a competitive advantage there. But there's also, depending on where you live, the grass may actually be greener on the other side of the fence. So, you also have to call a spade when it happens, and then, be able to transition a little bit. Outside of Idaho, where do you like to invest?
I've got several deals in Oklahoma and also in Texas.
Okay.
I really like the Carolinas and Kansas City. I'm looking at a couple deals in those areas right now.
Okay.
To me, it's more about the partners and the people that I have in those areas rather than the specific area.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always looking on the lookout as far as potential partners that I can come alongside and do deals with and work with.
Mm-hmm. Now, typically when you're doing deals in like, say Oklahoma, do you have somebody who is there on the ground? I mean, a lot of people in the industry call those the boots on the ground. Do you have somebody there on the ground as well?
Well, I always have somebody that's an expert in the market. Mm-hmm. They might not necessarily physically live there, but they have all the connections.
Okay.
For example, let's just say I moved, which I'm not planning on, by the way, but if I moved out of Twin Falls, Idaho, I could still be the boots on the ground, quote unquote, in Twin Falls, Idaho, even though I don't live here. Right. Yeah. So you need to have that market expert, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's what, investing in your backyard gives you above somebody else, is you do have that knowledge. If you lived in an area for 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to know that better than any outside investor looking in. And if it's like Twin Falls and you sent it, I mean, you've lived there for most of your life. You're going to have a very detailed knowledge of the market that a lot of outside investors won't. So you may actually be able to find deals that no one else will. And that's I think the reason why, looking in your own backyard makes sense is just because you know the area better than anybody else and you're able to find better deals. But anyway, speaking of deals, let's talk about one of them that you've done. Pick your first or your favorite and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I want to break the rules a little bit and tell you about two. The first one is going to be really brief, but my first foray into multifamily, I actually decided to go and offer on a $20 million apartment building, It was about 3 hours away from me. And I had no idea what I was doing. Let me just reiterate that to you. I called my single family realtor, the one that I used to buy single family homes with. And I said, I want to put an offer in on this building. And by the way, I'm about 20% under the market price, because I think that's what I did with multifamily. And I think that's going to work with that's what it was, single family. I think it'll work with multifamily. So she used the residential realtor form to submit, on a big $20 million apartment building. And obviously I didn't get the deal. And thank God that I didn't, right? Because what would I have even done with it, right?
Yeah.
And that was really the catalyst for me to start learning, and to really start learning and doing all that research we talked earlier. So I don't know if you'd call that my biggest failure, right? I've made other mistakes since then, but that was definitely a huge mistake of mine, just not knowing what I was doing.
You know what? My first offer was probably worse. I thought I was, paying a good price. I sent an email with a number. I didn't even know how to make an offer. I sent an email to the broker and said, how about 3.2 million? And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure this is going to sell above 4. It'll probably sell around 4.5. And so I was way below. But when I look back at that, I think, that was probably the best thing I could do at the time, because I'd never made an offer before. And yeah, it was a terrible offer, but it was the first of many.
Yeah, for sure. That's it. First of many. So my favorite deal, that you asked about, my favorite deal, I want to tell you about that one. I bought 33 units in Pocatello, Idaho, really close to you, Brian.
Yep.
Right down the road, actually. And there's a lot of lessons in this deal as well. I actually had put an offer in on this at $3.1 million. And I was driving away from the property, and I had about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to home. And my broker called me and said, your offer's been accepted. Sign the counter. Excellent. No problem. I'll sign it when I get home. Hour and a half, 2 hours, right? Yeah. So I'm drive home, and about the time I pull in my driveway, my broker calls and says, the seller rescinded the offer. He got a better deal.
That quick,
in less than 2 hours. And so I'm devastated, right? Because the whole time I was bragging to my friends, and driving home, I was bragging to my wife. And
call
my
everybody
friends,
Yeah, like, woohoo,
right? We got this, right? And then all of a sudden it went away. Well, about 6 or 8 weeks later, we got a call from the broker and said the other buyer couldn't perform. You still want it? Yes, I still want it. But if you want it, you have to be at this price. That delay cost me $200,000 and roughly 2 months. Well, it was still a good deal at the new price, and we bought it. And we went through the entire syndication process, which was an absolute just ball for me. I loved it. Learning about all the different pieces and going through all the different components, dealing with the attorneys, writing operating agreements and writing PPMs, and all of the minutia that most people would get bogged down in. I learned very quickly. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the process of purchasing a property, taking it from the LOI stage all the way to close, which, unlike on a single family house, has a ton of moving pieces. I actually wrote a checklist, and it had over 100 items that you have to check off just to purchase a property. I recorded a podcast recently, and we talked for about 5 minutes on it. And finally, the host of it said, let's stop and come back and record an entire hour-long episode about how to do this, right? Yeah. And I know, Brian, you've done all of this in your tribe, which, shout out to that, by the way, is a great group. If you guys don't know about it, definitely join it. But anyway, so 33 units. We bought this property. The rents were around $550 per unit. And when we went and we did the comps, the market analysis to figure out what these should be, we figured out that they should be somewhere around $875 to $900 per unit. So that's really where the value is in that delta. We didn't have to do major renovations. We didn't have to go and tear down a building. All we had to do was take in a property manager that knew what they were doing, take care of the tenants, and then the tenants will take care of you. 2 reasons I think this property is my favorite, right? So here we are, roughly, depending on when this comes out, year and a half after this takeover. And we have already outperformed all of those rent projections by roughly 20%. So we took our projections and we're up and above over that. And then the second reason is all of my investors are just so happy. They're calling me now and asking me, hey, can I come in and invest in the next deal with you?
Yeah.
And it just feels really good.
So something interesting about that project right there. I know the seller. I had lunch with him a while ago. I wasn't the other offer, but I was contemplating putting an offer in on that property. But where that is in the world, it's about 2 blocks away from Mountain View Cemetery. And there are dozens and dozens of Briscoes buried in that cemetery. That's my dad was born and raised in Pocatello, and I've got, great grandparents and great grandparents on both sides of my family that are from Pocatello. So, that's part of the reason why I live in Idaho now, though I think I still call Utah home. But yeah, so good little property, been there, like I said, met the seller. I do remember, seeing that you guys got that under contract. I'm like, that's a good one. That's a good one. Anyway,
Brian, everything's for sale.
Everything's for sale.
You want to buy it, we can negotiate.
Everything's for sale. All right. So yeah, Pocatello is a nice little community too. My focus right now is going to be a little further south of Pocatello. I think Pocatello is 45 miles from me, but I'm going to look in Salt Lake City next. So if that was in, anywhere between, Provo and Ogden, Utah, yes, I would probably offer a price. Anyway, that said, everything's going well. Glad to see it's going well. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little and ask you a question a little more about your motivation and why you do what you do. So what would you say your big burning why is?
We keep going to breaking the rules, but really I have two and they merge together, right? So number one, I love helping people. I kind of alluded to that earlier. So I really enjoy helping people have awesome homes to live in. And that's really what I look at is I take something that's not a great property and then I go and fix it up and I make it someone's home. And it feels really good for me to be able to do that. It's a little bit selfish to know that I had something really awesome to do. And then at the same time, on the flip side of that, now I can take an investor that couldn't do this on their own, right? Because buying these apartment buildings is not an easy task, right? Anybody can be a landlord and buy a 1 unit or a 2 unit, something like that. But to be able to buy these multi-million-dollar properties takes a lot of time and skill. So I can now help these investors invest their money and get these kind of level returns. So I'm helping people on both sides. Yeah. And then the second burning why is personal development. I do not believe that today I am the best version of myself. And I'm always looking to improve and always looking to get better and to push to the next level to become better version of myself. So then I can in turn help more people, right? So I help people to generate an income so that I can become a better person so that I can help more people.
Yeah, ends up being a virtuous cycle. The better you are, the more effective you are, the more people you help. If that makes you better and you're able to help more people, it just snowballs. You get that little snowball effect, and I love it. Well, last question for you, and then we'll talk to Heather. What's next?
I'm really shifting my entire focus on more education. As I mentioned, I always love helping people. I decided to become a coach for Jake and Gino. I teach their students on how to purchase multifamily apartment buildings, right? So I can teach people how to do it, which that's rewarding. But as I mentioned, that's not for everybody. Buying multifamily buildings is not for everybody. So I'm now shifting towards teaching investors, teaching people who want to go and put some money out on how to become the best investor that they can possibly be.
Absolutely.
So with that, I just launched a course on my website. Investor 101 is what I'm calling it. It's for that person that wants to go and learn how to become a passive investor and how to invest into real estate. And so it's a great little course about, what kind of questions you should ask before investing, what to look for. And there's even a due diligence checklist, these items that you need to ask before you ever put money with an investor. So focusing on that now.
All right. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes if you're okay with that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Awesome. Investor 101, and sounds like a very unique title. Let's put it that way. So, all right. And I just pulled it up. So that's going to be at senateeskridge.com. And like I said, we'll have a link to that in the show notes for anybody who's interested to check it out. So There we go. Well, that said, Senate, we're going to put you on pause for a second. And Heather, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Let me give you a quick history. One, I started in financial services. I like to tell people back in the 1900s. It was it was the late 90s. I used to
Right.
be yeah, it feels like well, it was forever ago now.
Yeah.
I started out as a trader in
Mhm.
Boston and then moved into private equity and worked in fund management, which was really cool. And then I moved to Florida
Mhm.
and decided I was more interested in real estate. If I was going to focus on any sort of investment, the most interesting thing to me was real estate. So I planned to become a real estate investor then. However, I ended up becoming a real estate agent,
Mhm.
working with investors in South Florida. That was back before the crash in like 08, 09. So in South Florida on the beach, I was selling pre-construction condos to investors, mostly from New England, New York area, right? Most of them I never even met face to face. And that was great until it wasn't. And and then I
Usually
ended
how it
up,
works. Yep.
yeah, then
Yep.
I ended up having twins and I stayed home with them for 5 years, at which point I actually got divorced. This was about 10 years ago. I got back into real estate. I'm now in North Carolina. I've been a residential real estate agent here since then. Always been interested in investing, but never tipped over to actually just being an investor. About a year ago, someone came in to talk to an investment club at my office,
Mhm.
and they spoke of syndications. And I was like, oh my gosh, it like marries my old life with my new life.
Yeah.
And I love it. But of course, I was like, I have no idea how I would get involved in that. And I basically sat on it for about a year until I was Googling and ended up finding a coach. And I've been in the coaching program for only about a month. I
Mhm.
am just like learning so much. I love it. I just love learning about it all. Still residential realtor full time, but hoping eventually to be an investor full time. Intending, I should say, not hoping.
Yeah,
Intending.
yeah. I think that the hope always comes first, but it's you take a little bit of hope, put a little action together, and you eventually get there, is how I look at it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of goodness there. I think a lot of people do something similar. I mean, I first read, let's see, it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, gosh, almost 20 years ago. And you hear all these people talking about other people's money and whatnot, and syndications and things like that. And I had the same reaction. It's like, it's good for those guys, but how can I do that? Right. But
Right, right.
I did something similar to you. I found a coach, and to me, that made a whole world of difference. Somebody who could just show me how to do it was just like, mind
Yeah,
blowing. So,
exactly. I mean, give me a path and I can follow it. And
yeah,
but I just really did not have any. I told someone it's like I have a yard full of leaves and I'm like trying to rake them to the middle. And
yeah,
that's kind of still where I am, but at least the coach is, giving me a rake.
yeah. Or, maybe they'll upgrade it to a blower here soon too. But
Who knows? Who
yeah,
knows?
a lot more efficient, a lot more efficient. But
That's what I'm hoping.
well, cool. So, what's the question I ask everybody? Senate already had his take at it and cheated a little bit by giving two instead of one. But what would you call your big burning why?
My big burning why is more a story than a one specific thing. I'm recently remarried. I have kids. They're now 15.
Mhm.
So there's a few things. One, I'd like to show them how to invest in real estate. I have done some single family investing and stuff, but not nearly to the extent of you guys. I'd like to show them that. I'm also looking at the light at the end of the parenting tunnel, kind of,
Yeah.
2.5 years, they're going to be gone. And I'm like, what I want to do? I've always wanted to be an investor and it fascinates me on so many levels. I'm also remarried and we want to get a house in Cape Cod that is currently above my financial possibilities. So
Yeah.
there's all those things. Long term, I would also like to start teaching women more about their own finances. I have far
Mhm.
too many female friends who really don't pay attention at all to their finances. And oftentimes when things go bad, or maybe a relationship, I hate to see that, but they don't know where to
Yeah.
start. I cheated even more. I got a lot of stuff wrapped up into that
That's all
story.
right. That's all right. So I don't think, I mean, just poking fun at Senate because he's the one that actually said it. But most people have more than one thing that drives them, and that's, I think there's a lot of good things there. Going to be an empty nester soon, and we got a birthday in our house. We got a 12-year-old now, but I've got two kids out of the house already, so I guess I'm halfway there. But I get it. I totally get it. But anyway, coming to my favorite part of the show. Hey Heather, we got Senate on the line. What do you want to ask him today?
Senate, thank you for being willing to answer my questions. I wanted to know about your first deal, but I'm wondering, that deal you just spoke of was not your first deal, correct?
No, it was not.
I just wanted to know, how did you find your first deal? Tell me a little about how you felt when that happened. You know, for me, the thought of actually getting something under contract, I think is extremely frightening.
My first multifamily deal, I don't tell this story a whole lot because it's an anomaly. I actually had a friend of mine that I knew from a real estate investor meetup right here in Twin Falls that I run. A friend of mine came to me and said, I have this 18-unit deal. I'd like you to help me buy it. So they went direct to seller, these guys, and they worked very, very hard on it. These guys made a list of every apartment building in Twin Falls, Idaho, where I live. And I mean, probably every single one of them. They drove around to them. They researched the owners. They found the owner of each one of them, and they called them regularly. They got this short list of the ones that they were interested in, probably about 20 of them, 20 complexes. And they had one that they had under contract. And they came to me for me to help them buy it. And so we went through the process together. And I went through the syndication process, setting up all the legal paperwork, finding all the capital, doing all the capital raising, that type of thing. And while my friend was negotiating directly with the seller and always in touch with that seller. So it's all about networking and having the right people is really the secret there. If I hadn't had that good connection with those guys, I wouldn't have that deal.
You fell into being a landlord, you fell into flipping, and then you fell into multifamily. I mean, what do you want to fall into next? I'll just follow right behind you.
Oh, well, the next thing long-term for me is focusing on that self-development I talked about earlier, right? So this is the year of self-development. I'm going to my first live Tony Robbins event in November.
I'll point out that, you know, falling in, I mean, a lot of people look at luck and things like that, but you know, Senate met them at a real estate meetup that he runs, you know, and I've been to that meetup a couple of times. It's about the hope and then the action, you know, so I would venture to guess, you know, Senate, if you never would have started that meetup, that deal never would have come across your plate.
Absolutely. If I hadn't done the meetup, if I hadn't constantly put in the effort, if I hadn't been learning, if I hadn't been putting in the work, you know, they came to me because they knew I could take it down.
And were you in that first deal, were you mostly the fundraiser? And I know you said you put the syndicate together. Was that your biggest role in that?
Yeah. So the two roles that I really played in that was the acquisition process, which is something that gets overlooked. A lot of people don't talk about it, but the actual, that list of 100 things I talked about, right? I was the one managing the Asana board and, you know, driving all that through, and then also raising the capital, making sure that all that went through. And then now I serve as an asset manager in that role, along with my partner, Chris, and we work together in that role now.
Gotcha. And were you ever an LP in one of these syndications first or no?
I have been an LP into syndications before. Yes.
So was that before you became a general partner, or I guess a better way to phrase the question is, do you think it's important for someone to invest as a limited partner before hopping over to the general partner side, or do you think that is not a necessary step?
I want to answer that question this way. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind, right? It's a chapter out of his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I would say the first thing to do is you need to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish. What is it that you want to do? What does your life look like 5 years from now? And then work backwards to that. And then if investing as an LP will help you achieve that, then you should do it. And I know that was not a direct answer to your question, but because everyone's situation is different. Okay. So for example, if long-term you want to be a limited partner, I say just do that and just invest as a limited partner. If you want to be a general partner and be active and out there buying these multifamily apartment buildings, my opinion is the only reason to invest as a limited partner is if you have someone that's going to show you the ropes as a partner. There's someone that says, okay, you go put some money into this deal, and now you can come to all of our asset management calls. You can see all of the internal workings of the business. And truly, it's like almost like a silent general partner. And they have no legal obligation to do it, but you have to trust them. I tell you that because this happened to me. I did this exact thing. I made an investment as a limited partner into a deal. And I said to the manager of the deal, the general partner. I said, okay, I want to be on every asset management call. I want to learn. I want to do all those things I just said. And he said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then after the deal closed, crickets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Nothing. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you're working with someone that you trust and that is small enough that you're still important to them. These big guys, you know, like, and I'm not going to pick on any one of them, but you know, if they're too big to remember who you are, you're probably not going to get that attention.
Yeah, my thoughts are very similar to what Sennett says, and I love that Stephen Covey book. It's probably the non-religious text that I have read the most time, cover to cover, is that book right there. But what I'll say is, in my situation when I was starting out, I had enough money in the bank to do a passive investment or two, and when I started looking at, you know, where I wanted to go, you know, which one's going to get me there faster, passive investing was not the answer. And, you know, what I decided to do was, you know, I wanted to be able to have money to fund my own earnest money deposit. I wanted to have my own skin in the game, you know, because when you're syndicating, these things matter. You know, if you want to find other GPs to help you take a deal down, you're a better partner if you have enough money to, you know, earnest money. The bank's going to require skin in the game. So if you have all that stuff, you know, I looked at it, okay, it's going to be better for me to find limited partners if I'm putting skin in the game. It's going to be better for me to find other general partners to help me tackle these deals if I have this money liquid. So for me, the answer was no. I didn't invest as an LP first. Now, on the flip side, if I would have had, you know, 200K or 100K more liquid than I did at the time, absolutely would be the answer. You know, I would have put a little bit in a passive investment on this side. I think when you asked the question, you said, does it help? Yes, it helps. Is it necessary? No, it is not necessary.
Okay. I'm wondering if it helps with raising capital if you've been a limited partner elsewhere. Or I guess a better question would be, well, let me ask this. How do you get investors interested in investing with you when you have no track record in this space, if you haven't been a limited partner?
Yeah. I want to answer your first question and your second question. I have a friend that has done 19 limited partner investments before he was active.
Okay.
And he said he learned so much more when he did his first general partner investment than he ever did as a limited partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So it does, like Brian said, it helps, but it's not the end all be all. So the second question, which was how do you get people to invest with you without a track record? I would say partners is the easiest way, right? Find and experience someone like Brian, someone like Sennett, someone that you like, that you can work with. And instead of your first deal being something you do on your own, go and work with one of these people that has a track record, right? That has something behind them that you can now leverage. If you can't do that, which I think that's the best way, if for some reason you can't do that, then you need to leverage a team. You talked earlier that you just joined a group, a mentorship group. I would say, look at this team I have behind me. Look at this team that I have that's supporting me. I like the first one better, partner with somebody like Brian or myself. If you can't do that, leverage your mentor.
Yeah. Let me ask you a follow-up question to that if I can. And Brian, you can probably answer this as well. But if I want to partner up with you and you're looking at me saying, oh, here's some newbie who wants to do this, hopefully they're committed. What is the best thing that I can bring to you to show you that I will add value? So is it bringing capital? Is it bringing the deal? I'm sure would be helpful. But what would make you go, yes, I would love to partner with her?
Yeah, good question. Sennett, you go first.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing is to take down a deal, there's lots of things that need to happen, right? You need time, you need experience, and you need money. Those are the three things that you need, right? And there's, you know, totally robbed that from another book. We'll talk about that book later, but you need those three things to get a deal done. And so you need to be able to provide one of those things. So and I don't know enough about you personally to say what it is for you, but you need to figure out what your skill sets are and what your unique value proposition is. Maybe you're boots on the ground on a deal in a great market. You live in a great market, and now you can be the person that I can call when I have a problem or to go walk a property. Maybe you live in a great market and you find a deal that you can bring to somebody like Brian or myself. Yeah, sure. Maybe you know some people you can bring some money to a deal, or that 101 list of things that I talked about that you have to do to take down a deal. Take some of that on, right? It's a lot of work. So there's lots of things that you can do, but you can't do any of it without networking. And find the people that you want to partner with and you're willing to work with, and then convince them that you can add value to them.
Yeah, I think everybody's different. And I mean, the coaching program you're in, I'm somewhat familiar with. I know they have what they call sponsorship calls, where they put people in front of you that are willing to take on the newer investors as partners. So you're a step up already, just being in that group where they kind of assemble that for you. But listen to what they're looking for. And that's really the key. Is, since you're in that group, I'm going to assume you have access to a lot of people like that. Listen to what they are talking about, listen to what they need, and try to fill one of those needs. For me, I like partnering with people who can bring me a brand new deal. If you have a deal under contract and you bring it to me and say, hey, if you help me out with this deal, we're going to give you a certain percentage of it. Number one, like Senate, I like helping people. That makes me feel good. But number two, now you're bringing me into the deal, cutting me into the deal. If I'm going to walk away with, a 5 or 10% ownership in a property, that moves the needle for me. As long as I like you and I like the deal, I'll definitely entertain talking to stuff like that. So for me, and every sponsor is different. For me, if you bring a deal, if you got a deal under contract, that's something that I will definitely be interested in. For others, there are some sponsors, and this is for someone who's brand new, you might want to look at the people who've done 2 or 3 deals. If you're looking to raise capital for somebody else, which is another way people can get in, that's one of Senate's, 3 things: time, money, or experience. You can look for somebody who needs the capital. Like I said, typically people who are 2 to 3 deals in, they've already exhausted their personal network, and they are going to be looking for new people to invest. And a lot of times they'll take on somebody who's brand new at raising capital.
Well, thank you. I think that's great advice from both of you. I really appreciate that.
We'll just wrap things up, and I'll ask each one of you one last question. Senate, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
I'm on almost every social media, but the best way to find me is just that website we talked about earlier, SenateEskridge.com. There's a bunch of resources on there. You can even schedule a call with me right from my website.
All right. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes. And then Heather, same question for you. How can investors learn more about you?
Sure. Right now, the best way to learn more about me is through my residential real estate, which is Raleigh Realty Mom. If you just Google Raleigh Realty Mom, you're going to see my YouTube channel, my Facebook, and all the socials and all the things. So,
all right. Sounds good. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Anyway, thank you so much to both of you. I very much appreciate your time and look forward to talking to both of you later.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Heather.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.